Yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah, what's up, guys? I'm the only one that doesn't have the mask.
Caught you slipping, bro.
What's up?
Caught you slipping.
Call me slipping.
All right, we ready to go?
Let's get it, dude.
Yeah, let's go. Awesome. Well, guys, today on Whiskey and Windage, we are welcome to have PSR on Print, Shoot, Repeat. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys.
Hi. So
Hi.
typically what we do, we like to do a little research on our guests. We like to do some research, but you, being a masked man, you're kind of a secret. But I'll tell you what, technology is a great thing. So nowadays, I did what the kids do, and I went to ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT to look up information on Print, Shoot, Repeat. And it's funny, it found some stuff. So we're going to go through a little quick bio on Print, Shoot, Repeat. Print, Shoot, Repeat is a popular YouTube making online content for 3D printed firearms, gun culture, firearms memes. Print, Shoot, Repeat maintains anonymity by wearing a mask, gloves in videos with high energy and humor in his content while talking about technical discussions on firearms.
Don't say his content. He's masked. We can't assume his gender.
Oh, my bad. We can't. Okay, so we can't assume. My bad. No, we can't play with the. They'll get us for that too on YouTube probably as well. I could say they. Okay, so here, let me finish. They have gained a significant following for high energy, editing music style, and advocacy in the two-way rights. His content does push boundaries on social media, making him a notable figure on the online gun community. PSR, does that sound about right? Is that who you are?
I'm honored, Mr. ChatGPT. Thanks for this sweet bio.
Yeah, that was about as most gray man as you could possibly be. But I was like,
I'm impressed.
We always like to look and see what people say. And it was like, dude, what are they really going to say about him?
I mean, hey, I'll take it. That was. I like it. Controversial. Did they say sort of? No, they didn't say controversial. They just
pushing the boundaries. You push the boundaries.
I like the pushing of the boundaries. I'm all about it.
Which makes you a prominent person on social media.
Yeah.
So PSR, I think it's probably fair to say that most of our listeners know who you are. I mean, none of them have seen your face. They've seen your character and probably some of your content. But give us just a quick introduction. Who is Print, Shoot, Repeat?
Oh man, well, I Print, Shoot, Repeat. I'm I guess first and foremost, mostly just a YouTuber. I guess I would say entertainer, musician with a passion for firearms and making them out of preferably squirted plastic.
It's kind of kinky.
Man, we got to change that. We got to get your first bit to be patriot, because first and foremost, you're a patriot. You're doing you're expressing your constitutional rights.
Absolutely.
You're an advocate and a patriot. Damn it.
Yes, there you go, patriot, and all of the above. Yes.
Depends who you ask, though. Some people think you're a horrible, mean. Some people think you're the devil, don't they?
Yeah, some people do. Some people think I'm just a debaucherous, dildo obsessed, just man. But I will just say I am a man. Let's get that out of the way.
Woohoo!
I got the digging balls on me. I mean, if people don't like the stuff, they don't have to watch it. I enjoy making people laugh and having a little bit of fun. And I guess, there's got to be a, in my opinion, you got to have a variety of things to watch in any kind of space, whether it's, guns, or if it's, technology, 3D printing, science, all that stuff. And there's some people that are really, clinical and very, qualitative about it and very to the point, and there's a place for that. And I think there's a place for people being silly and having fun too, even in the firearm space. So I definitely think I try to add a good amount of information too. And I think that's what most of the tech overlords, so to speak, are kind of afraid of. So
I think that doing some stuff, doing some research, and watching the Unsubscribed podcast that you were just on a couple weeks back, looking at it, you kind of moved away from being technical just because the technical stuff is what people like, but that's what the overlords hate. And
that's where
they think technical is going to relate and translate to, work in action by YouTube followers and YouTube viewers. And so that's what they're trying to get away from, which I see their point, but at the same time, I'm of the belief that it's not their responsibility to fight. I mean, they don't have a right to fight that, but to each their own.
Yeah. Unfortunately, teaching people how to make their own guns is frowned upon for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's the government's scared of that. I don't know.
Me neither. Something I saw that was interesting that made me laugh though was when I started looking at stuff on you. And I've watched you for a while, but what was funny is when we got you on, I was like, all right, I got to figure out some stuff that, when you get in this and you do this so long, it's like, how do you have someone on your show and ask them questions that aren't just recycled 25,000 times over and over and over and over again? So we try to, throw a couple little Easter eggs in there. But one of the things that stood out while I was looking, it made me laugh, was a lot of people in the Reddit community. So take that for what it's worth.
Already up to a great start.
They're
an evil place. It's an evil place.
They are hell bent that you are either administrative results or a plant.
Yes, I'm a Fed.
And every time I see that, I'm just like, do these guys really not pay that much attention? Like,
yeah, everyone's got entitled to their own opinion. That's part of the beauty of having it be somewhat mysterious, I guess, is that anyone can kind of come up with whatever answer they want to the question of who am I and where am I from, what do I do. I mean, it's funny that people think that a Fed could make the songs, because I was like, dude, you find one federal agent that can make songs like HK Slap, please send him to me, because then maybe I can become friends with him and actually maybe I can become a Fed. But no, I'm not.
I could get paid for this.
Yeah, that would be a wild psyop. But no, I'm not a Fed. I'm not admin. I'm not nearly as large and muscular as him. Well, everyone knows his name now, so don't have to say it. But Aaron's a good dude. We hung out just recently at Finnish Brutality 2025 out in Finland in the winter. That was super fun. But yeah, he's a homie. I am not him, and not I'm honored. Honestly, he's pretty he's a beefcake. He's got some meat on him. So yeah, shouts out to admin.
So PSR, I want to go back to the 3D printing, and a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people are scared of it. We use the term ghost gun a lot. They like to throw that term out there. Is there also a stigma because, and I'm sure you can speak on this, when people first started 3D printing, when they just came out, the filaments they were using weren't the best, and people were making some pretty bad products. Let's be honest, they were bad. Is that a big part of the stigma still? Because I know the filaments and the machining has come a long way. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think when the first public kind of like the societal conscience or whatever, the first big moment for 3D printed guns was, I think, in 2013 with Cody Wilson when he did the Liberator, and that was kind of this whole thing where it's, oh my God, it's a completely made out of plastic gun. And I guess that was like, in my opinion, kind of more like a PR stunt than anything, because that gun sucks. And I guess it was kind of proof of concept, I suppose. But it also is kind of like just like trying to get some publicity and whatnot. But we've come a long way since the Liberator. The Liberator, while it's a cool design, just from a just from a design standpoint, it is cool. But you still need metal. Like the people think that they're going to get them through metal detectors and stuff. It's like you still do need a little bit of metal on that gun, very little, but technically speaking, it has to have a little bit of metal in it legally. But I mean, it's a 22, and it doesn't last more than a few shots. So obviously, with the 3D printed gun stuff, the majority of the projects that take place are ones where you need metal components, A, and then B, a lot of them are utilizing already existing parts that are for firearms that are firearms parts. Obviously, you've got the FGC9, which I have up here, that you can make completely without any firearms parts, and I think that's what makes it a really cool design. And I would say the FGC9 is like more of a moment of, oh wow, like the 3D printed guns are here and they're here to stay and they're actually viable. With the FGC9, you can make the barrel using ECM rifling in your house, so you don't need any big tools or anything like that. And you can get the parts that are not firearms parts in countries where those are prohibited. So I'd say that's a pretty big step, much more of a big step than the Liberator was. But yes, since the Liberator, they've come quite a ways. And even since like the early Glock frames, the Glock frames now are far more advanced in terms of just their reliability, their ease of, building and things like that. The initial rails were not so great, and now you've got companies churning out a ton of rails. My channel sponsor, does the rails, Base Engineering. So yeah, it's come a long way, but it's really cool to see the creativity that goes down with some of these designs. And I think that's what interests me from the very beginning, is that like you can like, if I could buy a Glong, I'd probably buy a Glong, the Glock that's also a water pipe. But you can't buy that. You can't buy it. Right, so until someone sells one that's the serialized non-ghost gun, why would I? I want that. Let's make that. So
make it.
That's what's so cool about the DIY community is I think that's what I love the most about it. I love also pissing off the government and making stuff that they don't want you to make, obviously, even though it's legally constitutional protected right. The coolest part for me is making these like new iterations of old designs, like the 3D printed MP5, the KF5, for example. You can build an MP5 for cheaper than you can buy one, and it's lighter, and it uses an AR trigger. The trigger's way better. You can do lots of, you can add attachments like you can on an MP5. You'd have to buy the rail and all that stuff. So I think it's like projects like that I just think are really cool. And it's just super fun to put together a gun on your own. It's like a really neat feeling to put it together. And if you have the TISM, it's like a perfect adult TISM activity. Like if you're building Legos or building model cars or trains when you were a kid, like this is going to be, and you're into guns, this is going to be your hobby for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like, it's basically, everybody in the gun community, somehow, way, shape, or form, everyone's assembled an AR-15. Most people. And, AR-15s are pretty much, or M4s, whatever you want to call them, they're pretty much, the Legos of the gun community. And this is just like an AR-15 built on trend. It's like you get to build everything from start to finish pretty much. And I kind of get some of the stigma around it, because when you look at certain 3D printers and certain filaments and certain things, I'm not all up to speed on all of that stuff. But when I first heard of 3D printed guns, I wasn't against them. I just didn't want anything to do with them, because the only 3D printed objects that I had experience with were like whistles and kid toys. And those things looked like they were made from like a $50 printer on Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, this looks like crap. There is no way in hell I'll hold something like that in my hand and pull the trigger. And I think that's just like with computers and cell phones and TVs and you name it, just technology constantly advancing. And I think I heard you say at some point now the filaments that are available, you can basically make them, not saying that Glock is the standard or Glock is the upper end.
They are basically
but
for handguns.
You're able to use basically the same materials and build, frames that look almost identical, other than the serial number and the markings. It would be hard to tell them apart. Is that right?
Yeah, more or less, yes. They have, I mean, it's not going to be anytime you're doing the FDM printing, which is when it's layer after layer and it's being squirted like a hot glue gun, basically, each layer on top of each other. That process inherently, it has its benefits, which is you can print it pretty fast, and it doesn't take a commercial grade printer usually, and they're pretty strong for sure. Is it going to be OEM Glock quality in terms of like the Glocks that we have in our arsenal and whatnot are going to outlive us. Like chances are, unless someone cuts them in half or whatever with a bandsaw or whatever, they'll probably outlive us. Like the polymers that they have are meant to be, basically until nuclear winter. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So will it be like that? I mean, we're not quite fully there yet. There are I'm sure you guys have some suppressors that are 3D printed. At this point, they're really popular. So metal 3D printing is something else with basically lasers. They're like adding the material. They're like essentially burning the material as layers on top of each other with metal, and then you have to anneal it after and put it in an oven and bake it. There's a similar process actually with FDM printing and nylon. So the PLA is what is going to be the easiest to print, and that stuff is like super cheap, super accessible. And I have plenty of PLA guns that have thousands of rounds, like my Plastikov PLA, thousands of rounds. It's a Draco receiver, completely 3D printed. Didn't require any rivets or anything like that.
Like that.
The Plastikov, I got it right there. I'll bring it over in a sec. But like that's out of PLA, and as long as I'll grab it right now.
Matt, you love the show and tell.
Plastic AKs.
Matt loves show and tell.
Show and tell. Matt
I love
loves
show and
AKs.
tell.
Tell. So this is the receiver. This is the Plastikov. This is unlike a normal AK where you gotta get a press and rivet tools and all that stuff. This doesn't require any of that. That's the main selling point. But the main benefit of it. It uses an AK parts kit. It's got to be a headspace one. You could headspace it yourself, but then that does require tools like a press and everything. But you would get a headspace kit from Arms of America or MAF or wherever, and then you would put it together. And it's got this design is pretty cool because the previous design actually didn't have a safety selector, which for many people that would be a deal breaker, but this one does. So this is the safety selector, and what's cool about this thing is that it prints in all one monolithic piece. So I printed it in different colors so you could see the different parts of it. You got a pick rail on here, just off rip, so you don't have to add any kind of side rail mounts. And so that's, I think, another benefit of it that's really cool. But this whole part that's gray here is all one piece. So this whole thing here, and it extends back here. So it's a monolithic receiver. And then the trigger pack is more similar to like what an HK MP5 has, where it kind of just goes in the bottom and you screw it together. But the trigger pack, it's super easy to, it's the easiest AK trigger install I've ever done because it's all just in this one little piece, and you put the trigger together beforehand, and then you slap it on there. And then you got, accessory rail on the back for stocks or whatever you want. So, and that's its own piece. But yes, it's held together with screws and Loctite. But like I said, this is just a PLA this isn't the carbon fiber nylon. This is just standard run of the mill. I mean, it is a PLA Pro, which is a little bit stronger than other PLA filaments. It's made by this company called
But it's
Polymaker.
still not unapproachable.
Oh no, yeah, this is going to be the easiest stuff to print. The nylon stuff, it requires a little bit more heat because it's nylon, so a Glock frame isn't going to melt. This thing, if I leave this in my hot car in the summertime, this could experience warping. So it's not going to melt like chocolate, but it'll warp to the point where you'll have like the bolt might not fully rack back. It might get caught up because it's got or anytime there's spring tension, like for example, like a mag release or something like that. If it's made out of PLA, that mag release is going to bend. And I've run into that just by leaving it in my car or whatever. And so that's where the PLA is really kind of suboptimal, is in any kind of like heat. But I have with that said, I have like mag dumped like 3 or 4 mags in a row with this, and it's been fine. So the heat of actually the gun is not so bad, relatively speaking, because I've got I use RTV around the well, like on the MP5, use RTV around where the barrel clamp is, so that kind of keeps and I use nylon barrel clamps for my MP5, but basically what we're getting with the nylon stuff, the nylon is more temperature resistant, so you're not going to have it melt, and it's got a little bit more like bend to it, like a Glock frame does.
Okay.
And so you end up having if you print it correctly, it should be as strong or stronger than the PLA. The PLA is actually quite strong in terms of just being able to handle forces of stuff. Like if you print it correctly, the PLA is actually really quite strong. It's more of a rigid strength than the nylon, which is got a little bit more give and bend to it, which is a good thing, but also sometimes a bad thing, because the nylon is actually, once you print it, it can creep because of like tension, for example. It can actually expand a little bit, whereas the PLA doesn't do that. So you do run into nylon creep, which is why some people take the further step of actually annealing their nylon, which is like you put it in an oven for a certain amount of time, and it basically crystallizes the particles a bit more, and it actually shrinks. So what you need to do if you're going to anneal it, and if you want to make it the strongest possible, and you're going to anneal it and put it in the oven, you actually have to print it at like 101% instead of 100%. So you have to make it just a little bit bigger.
Glock shrinky dinks.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty
like
much.
Jumping in a cold pool. Yeah, it shrinks a little bit.
Yeah, it does. So if you, I know I've heard you say you're not an SOT, but you got some SOT friends. I'm an SOT FFL.
Nice.
If I wanted to go in there and decide, hey, I'm going to start printing, and I want to run, stuff at full auto. I want the turbo button.
Yeah.
What material do you recommend if I were going to build, the Glock, or I'm going like the Glock clone, or I'm going to build the AK clone or whatever? Like what in your experience is working better?
I would say if you're just getting started printing, which I would recommend this for anyone who gets started printing, whether you got an SOT or not, or whether you're planning on doing a super safety build or whatever it is. I would just start by printing PLA to just understand kind of what you got to do to print, make a couple test prints. I would recommend everyone go make a couple test prints before printing a firearm. Just to make sure, whether it's just like there's plenty of downloads on like, this is non-firearm stuff. So thingiverse.com has a bunch of great non-firearm designs. I'm not joking. It's actually the best repository for free files out there that are non-firearm files. They don't allow firearm files. So just a heads up to the YouTube people. This is not me telling you where to go to find guns. It's just a great place to find really cool doodads and like practical, I got like a SD card holder that I found on Thingiverse. So
dude, they got like
just little trinkets or whatever, little things.
Yeah, but it's like
car parts on there too. There's a lot of car parts I've looked at on Thingiverse.
Yeah. So car parts, like whatever it is, you could go on Thingiverse and find it and test print it and see, okay, this looks good. And then, then have your go at a firearm. I have my buddy who's got an SOT came and brought his we did dual Glock 17Ls that had switches on them, 3D printed frames out of PLA. So not the nylon stuff, just regular old PLA plus the PLA Pro from Polymaker. We tried to break them and we couldn't. They just kept shooting. Sometimes you'll run into with the Glocks if they're not printed great, or if you don't. Sometimes if you print like really fast, it will degrade the strength and the structural rigidity. So the Bamboo Lab printers, or the newer enclosed printers, have an enclosure, so it stays pretty warm in there, and that does affect the printing quality and like the structural rigidity. If I was to print it out in the middle of the winter outside, that's not going to turn out very strong compared to if it's in its own, enclosed area that's warm. So having the enclosure helps. And like for example, the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon or the P1S, those have enclosures and they print pretty damn fast. You just don't want to print too fast because then sometimes the layers won't adhere to each other optimally. So I always just say, keep it in like the recommended speed setting for what you're doing. And usually in like the files, like the PDFs that they provide, they'll give you like a recommended speed, or, just don't go too fast and you should be fine. And then you can go fast after you don't go too fast, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I did. So you've mentioned the Bamboo, and you've mentioned a couple models. I guess 2-part question. First part is, give or take, how many printers do you have? And then if you could have just one printer, which one would be your go-to?
Good question. I probably have freaking 12 printers at this point. But the thing is, most of them are in storage because I just can't fit them in the house. This is the gun room / music studio that I got, and I can't put the printers in here because they'll just be making all this noise. So I got like my guest room, and that has my one printer that I usually print on. And so I guess that printer is probably what I would recommend. Now, they have unfortunately come under kind of scrutiny lately. And if you're into the 3D printing stuff, you'll know. But Bamboo Lab, they were started by some employees, former employees of DJI. If you know DJI, obviously the big drone manufacturer, they also manufacturing a lot of like filming equipment and stuff, like their gimbals and all that.
Microphones,
yeah, microphones, gimbals. They've pretty much cornered the market when it comes to that kind of stuff. At least gimbals and drones, more or less too. So a couple of guys that used to work there started Bamboo Lab as kind of like the product itself, I really love. It's capable. The one that I have is the X1 Carbon, and so it's capable of printing really hot filaments, like at a higher temperature, like the carbon fiber nylon stuff I was telling you. So you can print that stuff. It's enclosed, and you don't have to use the. It's like basically a tether between your laptop and your printer via Wi-Fi. You send the files just wirelessly to the printer, which is very handy. Before, like with the Ender 3, for example, which the Ender 3 is what I started on, specifically the Ender 3 V2. You can get the original Ender 3s probably still on Amazon, probably for like, or wherever you want to get it, probably for like $150. Like, they're stupid cheap. And I printed a ton of great, very, functional items, let's say, on that printer with no problems. It's just, you got to build it. So, well, you got to put it together. You got to assemble it. And it's a bit more complex than an AR. I'll just say that. It takes some tinkering to get it running perfectly. So I always recommend the Ender 3 as a first printer for people, because if you are really wanting to do it, I mean, there's an argument for it being your first printer, and there's an argument against it. Sometimes people get one, for example, and they'll set it up, and then they'll print something and it won't come out great, and then they'll basically give up, right? And that's not what we want. So before, it kind of took a little bit of like patience. If you were really into it, you would be able to eventually get there. It just, sometimes the way that they come, you got to kind of fiddle with some stuff. So it's not necessarily ideal, but it's also $150. So very accessible. And if you have the desire to make it work, you're going to make it work. And there's plenty of guides and troubleshooting out there. That's another great thing about it, is it's such a popular printer that there's so much content on YouTube about fixing stuff and how to work with issues, that you're going to be able to, if you're really dedicated to trying to learn it, you will learn it, right? And the other option would be, okay, like I don't want to mess with any of that stuff. I just want to press print and I want it to print perfect. And then, I don't have time for that shit, right?
Buy once, cry once.
Yeah, buy once, cry once type vibe. And so that would probably be what I got right now. That's my main printer, and that would be the Bamboo Lab. The Bamboo Lab P1S is, I think, very similar to the X1 Carbon, but just minus a couple different features. I ended up just saying I want to do the X1 Carbon because it's got the capabilities that I need. So it's about, I want to say, around $1,000, maybe a little bit more, like 1,100 or something. So
It's not bad.
I was looking it up.
Yeah. So, but with that, you get the capability of printing. Yeah, with basically no real setup. You hit print. You dial in your you could even use the recommended settings that they have for different filaments. You can print the nylon stuff. Like I said, the nylon requires a bit more extra steps, whether you have a nice printer or not, because it's very hydroscopic, meaning that it absorbs water a ton. So nylon, if you leave it out just in even just like a non-humid winter environment, it'll absorb less, but it'll still absorb enough moisture that you actually will get like these bubbles. You'll hear bubbles cracking basically when you print, and that's a no good. That's not good. So you're going to end up not having a very structurally rigid part, or it won't have very good layer adhesion is what it's called. So what I would do to remedy that is, if you're going to do the nylons, get a food dehydrator or a filament dryer, but there's not really that many great filament dryers that are good for nylon. Maybe it's been a little while since I've got one, but there are some that can do it. I more use those filament dryers as like a way to keep the nylon dry once it's dry. But if you're trying to dry it from being really absorbed with water to being completely dry, I just use a food dehydrator, put it in there for 8 hours, or I would say, I don't know, 12 to 24 hours, you're definitely good. At like 160, 70, 80 degrees, and then Fahrenheit, and then you should be pretty good to go. You'll be able to tell the way it prints, if it's good, if it's dry or not. So,
Okay.
So yeah, I would say, and I was going to say, so these guys that started DJI, they started Bamboo Lab, the printer company, and it's like, if you've ever had an Apple product, it's that similar, really great packaging, really well thought out, like presentation, the way you set it up, like the steps that they give you. It's just the branding and the marketing, but also just like the presentation of the product is really good in my opinion. And it's like akin to Apple, the way that they have their, right. It's just clean, simple, easy kind of thing, right? Where they kind of ran into a little bit of controversy recently was they I think, I didn't look actually fully into it, but it was something that had to do with them storing data on their servers about printer models, or something about data being accessed, potentially being accessed. And of course, the 3D printing gun community is definitely not about that.
Yeah,
just because
about DJI, just like
a paranoid group, I would assume.
I mean, it's same stuff.
Yeah. I mean, privacy is very important. Whether I just think everyone should have the right to privacy. I mean, period. Obviously, in the age of the internet and the age of our devices being connected to GPS all the time, it's pretty much impossible, damn near impossible, to have unless you live out in a shack with no internet in the middle of fucking Montana or whatever. It's hard to be completely off grid from the eyes of cameras and GPS and all that stuff. So for me, it's not a huge deal because I'm literally publicly posting all of my guns that I print. So I mean, and anyone can access it if it's on YouTube. So I'm not as concerned with it. But for people that are, and I think people just like automatically, or the people that are like, oh, what do you got to hide, mister? It's just like, well, I just have a right to privacy. I'm not doing anything illegal, but I don't want my data being out there. So if I can prevent it from being out there, I will. So that's kind of the stance that a lot of people are taking in the 3D printing gun community against this. But apparently there was some company that immediately after they announced this thing, or after they made this change in their terms of service or the firmware or whatever it was, like someone immediately hacked it. So it's like, you know, I mean, the thing is, it's just like people find ways around it, whether you like it or not. You know, it's just the way it is. So I'm not super concerned with it, but you can also just, I think it had to do with the file uploading, like the wireless transfer. So you can transfer it via an SD card, and you can have your printer not connected to the internet. So there is that option. So I would recommend, if you want to have zero fiddling and messing around and you just want to get to printing, the Bamboo Lab is a great option. I know that there's a bunch of other companies that have kind of followed their lead with these enclosed printers that are probably even a little bit less expensive. But as far as the product goes, I really have no bad things to say with the Bamboo Lab, other than some of that more like high level privacy stuff. But you can look into it and research it if you're interested in the printer and decide for yourself. But if you also are a tinkerer and you like to learn stuff and you want to learn about the process of 3D printing from a very simple machine, the Ender 3 V2 series, they've got a ton more now. Like, yeah, you can get those for super cheap on Amazon still. Like, I would recommend that route if you want to kind of get your hands dirty first, or get your hands yeah.
The P1S actually doesn't look too terrible, and it's kind of middle of the road. It's a little more than the Ender 3, but it's less than the Carbon. I mean, it's kind of like right there at like $650. I mean, it's not a bad deal.
Yeah, the P1S is great. I think it can still print high temps. Maybe you just have to get maybe the higher temperature hot end. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't have like the big screen or the touch screen, which is not a deal breaker in my opinion. And it also, I think, doesn't have the LiDAR scanning, but that's not necessarily a deal breaker either. I think if it can print the hotter filaments, then I would say that's a great computer.
It says enclosed body for high temp filament printing, so that's advertising.
It should be good then, honestly. And yeah, like I said, like once you get a few PLA prints under your belt, like, go ahead and send it with the nylons. There's a ton of really cool, really great filaments out there for nylons. Like I actually have a, well, this is something not DIY, but it is 3D printed, and I'll show you this real quick. I just got it actually 2 days ago. Hold on.
More show and tell.
Or show and tell.
Make sure I pick up the right headphones here.
Nope. Yep. Nope. Yep.
These are the right ones.
There we go.
This is a VC61, obviously.
Yes,
Here.
the Scorpion.
Yeah, the little OG Scorpion. I banana taped the mags together because it looks cooler, but these are just 2 10-rounders. I've been looking for someone that sells welded like 30, 35 round mags. I hear you can actually do it.
He's got a guy.
Yeah?
Shinobi.
I got a guy that'll make them for you.
Oh, bro. I will, like, where's the credit card meme? Credit card meme. Take my money.
Well, they're gonna look sexy too. I think he'll make them look sexy.
I follow you, but you don't follow me. But I'll send you a DM at the end of the show with some of the guys' work.
Please do.
He's the guy that also welds all the AK mags together and throws like 3 together and makes this big huge.
Oh, I think I maybe. Well, I know there's probably a few of those, but this guy I was talking to, is he out of Florida?
No, this guy
he's in Idaho.
He makes like
this
he
is like
puts
one
like
of his AK mags.
Perforated mags. It does
sick.
crazy stuff.
That's
he does
cool.
like cutouts and like will weld expanded metal on them and do crazy paint jobs and
shout out Shinobi.
Yeah, Shinobi welding, man. That dude does his
Shinobi
thing.
welding.
Shinobi welding. All right. Well, yeah. Shoot me a DM and I will absolutely hit him up for business because I just want a long boy on here. But this is a 3D printed serialized receiver for this VZ61, and it's by this company Titus Arms. He was at SHOT Show. He came to my little range day event that we did, and he's doing these receivers and he's selling them. So these are PA6 CF. So these are a FDM printed receiver that are nylon, and
What's
he
that
does. Mean? So it's FDM, meaning like it's printed on a Bamboo Lab, probably.
Okay.
And it's using over-the-counter filament, but it's annealed, so it's really strong, and it's awesome. I went out and shot this last night, suppressed. It's super quiet, and it's got the original VZ61 internals. So it actually, I think this is actually one of the only companies that he actually still puts the rate reducer in this, even though it's semi-auto. He puts the rate reducer in it, and it's like it's a pretty neat deal. And he will he sends these as complete guns, but you can buy them as non-complete with just the receiver for $60.
Dude,
wow.
So like you could buy you could buy that receiver and then go to AOA or wherever you want and buy a CZ. You could buy
Parts
the Scorpion parts kit and just go to freaking town.
Yeah, I think that the complete ones with barrels, with either threaded or regular barrels, are like
$200 or $300.
Yeah, not even. Yeah, it's like $260 or something like that. Yeah. So you've got yourself a $300-something Scorpion.
Dude, I'm all over that. I'm gonna get after. Well, go ahead and plug him now. Who does this?
Yeah. So this is this guy. Corbin is his name, and he's from this company called Titus Arms. Check out Titus Arms. He got a pretty good shout out from TFB TV at SHOT Show.
Nice.
I mean, because this is just cool as it's cool as hell.
Oh, yeah, it's cool as hell, dude.
And the serial number's here, so it is a FFL item. If you get it transferred. So obviously I have another DIY one that I have that's actually. It uses only a couple parts from the parts kit. It just uses the upper, obviously, but it uses an AR fire control group, and they call that the CZAR or the ZAR. And that is a VZ61 receiver that's already got the pick rail and stuff on it. This actually does have the dovetail. If you did want to put the stock on it, you can eventually put the stock on it if you SBR it.
You want to SBR it,
And the cool thing about Titus Arms is that he said he will, free of charge, if you get it SBR'd and just send him the tax stamp, he'll send you the stock. So for free. So that's cool. I mean, not a lot of companies doing that. The stocks are worth a lot. Like if you I remember when I got my first parts kit that I built this with, I wasn't going to do an SBR because I was back when I was taking like, a year. I ended up just selling the stock, and I think I sold it for like $80 or something. So, you get the kit and everything, and if you want to put the lower together yourself, you just buy the lower for $60. It might be like $80 shipped or something to your FFL.
Yeah,
honestly, pretty sweet deal, and it looks really cool, and it looks about as close as you could get to the original if it's printed.
That's sick,
dude.
So
PSR, I noticed I was going to say, sorry, Adam. I noticed in your background your helmet back there under the PSR. So I have a question. Do you make, it's a two-part kind of, do you actually design some of the stuff, or do you just get all your stuff?
I honestly, I wish that I could take credit for the designs, but no, that's not my skill set. So my skill set really lies in the entertainment and presentation side of things.
Well, somebody listening, somebody that follows PSR, that knows how to do those things. This dude needs a helmet holder that is the head that looks like PSR.
Oh man, that would be
cool.
Sick.
Dude,
they've got the Giga Chad ones. Have you seen the Giga Chad printed one?
Yeah. and honestly, it's with the mask, not to pick on your face here, but it's pretty damn simple. It's basically a silhouette. You just got to get the detail on the goggles and the perforations, but that would be sick as fuck if you had a good idea. A PSR helmet holder back there.
You're very true. That's very true.
He's
man.
a professional 3D printer. He could print it. He printed it himself.
No, I just got to scan my face.
You got to scan that stuff. Somebody's got to do that part.
Well, I mean, that's the cool thing about the 3D printing. The scanners I've gotten really good, like DIY, like easy, not too expensive 3D scanners to use. I mean, I know people use it for all sorts of stuff, whether it's like for video games or whatever, but you can scan stuff and have it come out pretty accurately, and then you can, just print it. If it's a piece that for example, like I got an MCX, I got the sear trip for an MCX from Parker Mountain Machine. I mean, if you're an SOT, you know about that. The MCX, basically, in order to make it go fast with, like, let's say an FRT, completely legally, of course, you need a sear trip for the back, and it rides in this channel in the upper of an MCX. And if you could print that, which I'm sure you can, you could probably, that'd be a part where you could probably just scan it and then you could print it,
That's crazy.
And those are like $160 from Parker Mountain Machine. Shouts out to Parker Mountain Machine for even selling those. That's cool.
That's awesome. But I want to talk about the misconceptions of 3D printing guns, because I'm a true believer that there are two types of people that aren't for the Second Amendment. You fall into one of these two. You are a true gun grabber that wants to take all the guns, or you're just uneducated and you fall into the fear mongering. And a lot of times the gun grabbers know that those are the ones they empower, the fear mongers. I don't blame the fear mongers, the uneducated, because they just don't know. So they're not necessarily bad people. They just don't know. So we're going to talk about those people. If you were going to address those people, like misconceptions, like first and foremost, you've now shown, 3 firearms? All those firearms you've shown, if you try to put them under a trench coat and walk through a metal detector, that metal detector is going off, correct?
Correct.
So, because think about back in the early 80s when the Glocks first came to the U.S., people were saying you could go through a metal detector with this item. It was an all plastic gun. So the misconception, even when Glock first came out, there was misconceptions in the early 80s about an all plastic gun that couldn't be traced. And we know that's not true. So when it comes to that, all these guns are printing. It's not like you can just hide it and get through a metal detector, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. And then even if it's all plastic, the firearm, what are those projectiles made out of?
That's right. And it sounds crazy, but if you're not into this, that's something else. And now also there's another one that people bring up a lot. Well, this is so easy because now a criminal that wants to come back can just go make a gun in his house and go do a crime. I'm the believer that if someone's going to do a crime, it's probably way easier to steal a firearm than to print one.
Buy one on the street.
Or buy one on the street. I don't think a criminal is going to go buy a printer, go learn how to download it, understand everything you just talked about, and then do a bunch of trial runs. Like, I mean, if you think about it, but people don't think that way. They think, oh, I can buy this machine, I can hit the go button, and 15 minutes later, I have a gun.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, it'd be cool, but that's not quite the case. I mean, legally speaking, yes, like if you printed a Glock frame, I mean, boom, there it is. You have a gun technically, legally speaking. You've got either an AR lower receiver or a Glock lower or whatever it is. But that you can't take that lower receiver and expect to do anything other than maybe maim someone with it, because it's or use it as a blunt object to maybe defend yourself by beating someone. But no, you got to put in the work to get everything to fit in there, and I mean, making a Polymer 80 or something like that is probably easier in the end than printing one, just because printing it's unless if your printer's dialed in and it's good, it's working, then it should be, everything should slide in there and everything. But sometimes you run into like, for example, with the Ender 3, the layer lines aren't perfect, and sometimes you got to do some filing, and even the first P80 I built.
I've done a ton of those.
It had like it was like binary by accident when I first did.
That'll happen.
Yeah. So I mean, but with the 3D printing stuff, it's not as plug and play as maybe people expect it to be from the outside. From the inside, if you're a gun guy and you say, oh, well, here's a Glock frame.
Right.
And, I got to just like take a drill to it or whatever, clear out, like basically just like ream out the holes so I can fit the pins in there and little stuff like that. But if you, I know they've done this with like Vice reporters and stuff like that, where they'll be like, I 3D printed a gun. This is what I learned. And like, it's so incredibly easy. And it's like they got help from someone. Like, I want to see all these big news channels just like do it without any guidance, and then see how hard it is.
I was gonna say, and that's the whole point. Criminals aren't going to take this time. Someone that wants to do a bad thing with a firearm is going to either buy one off the street, they're going to steal one, or they're just going to find another means of a weapon. I mean, I don't think it's just like most time good guys aren't wearing bad guys don't use holsters, right? It's the same concept of, if you're going to be a responsible gun owner, then you're probably the person that's going to buy the machine, take the time to make it. Now,
I was going to say, I'm a upstanding citizen.
You're okay,
kinda. But if I decided to do criminal activity based off of off the question you just said, I wouldn't know where to start. So what I would have to do is I would have to steal PSR's setup.
I have to steal the printer first.
And honestly, I don't know where to buy a black market like gun. I mean, I say that funny, but like I would have better luck just going and standing on a street corner asking who's got a pistol for sale than it would be for me to figure out where PSR lives, how to get there, how to get in his house and get the stuff. And then did I steal everything right? Did I plug it up right? And what's that last file? Like,
yeah.
Most of the time, people that do violent crimes aren't those guys. And most of the time, the guys that do the computer crimes aren't those guys. And if you can find like that rare where they cross, like they're just badass anyway. I mean, even if they're
yeah,
just,
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, the reality of it is like whether it's ghost guns or P80s or regular normal transferred firearms that you fill out a 4473 for. Like, unfortunately, humans are flawed. Humans have bad intentions sometimes, and you can't. It's called. I mean, it's freedom, and freedom's dangerous. Yeah. And it's part of having the right to have firearms. Is that there's going to be some bad people out there that decide to do bad things with them. Unfortunately,
what was
but if you but if you look at the sheer amount of firearms in this country and the sheer amount of gun owners, it's so small. It's so small of the people that are actually doing harm with them. Yeah. And so I think that's the more thing that we need to look at too, is like, really, out of all of these people, you're going to say everyone can't have this now because a couple people did some bad stuff with it, And that's
it sucks. Yeah. In the Army, we say if one person shits their pants, everyone wears a diaper. And it's the same concept. But so here's a question for you, and this is your opinion. So I do believe too. I believe everyone should be able to 3D print in their home and make their own firearm. Do you believe that every firearm that you print, you should have to put a serial number on?
No. No.
Why?
I don't think that actually. I don't think that's. I think serial numbers are kind of looked at as this end all be all. Like, oh, we solved the crime, we got the serial number. When in fact it's usually, oh yeah, well, I sold that gun to like someone. The friggin' cops show at my door and they say, what's going on with this? And I say, oh, I sold that gun about 2 years ago. And then that guy sold it to someone else. And then that guy sold it to a guy that was prohibited or whatever, or whatever it happened. Yeah, okay. And then it ended up being in a shooting or something, right? Did that serial number, I mean, what did that do to prevent the crime at the end of the day? You came and you looked at the trace of where it came from. Did we actually prevent a crime? No. And serial numbers, to me, I get why that they've got them, totally. I mean, just like product serial numbers in general, whether it's the Mac I'm streaming from right now or the keyboard that I've got, like if there's a problem with it, a QC issue, like you got to have a serial number so you can see what went wrong or whatever. Yeah. But as far as like the whole tracing thing, to me, it's a little overrated in terms of just the actual effectiveness of using that as like a way to combat like crime.
I kind of see both sides as the FFL. Like, I've got a piece of paper sitting right over there that at the end of the year, I just got it now. I have to fill out how many firearms I manufactured under my company, not just like building some guns, but I actually roll marked my company name on it. And it's point blank, it's for tracing. That's what it's for. They can tell me it's for anything else under the sun, and I do agree with you on, you want a serial number, and I don't even want to say a serial number because that's just like, I don't know, that's faux pas. Like, you need some identifying marking so you can tell what batch, what lot number, whatever it is. So if you have a problem with the manufacturing process, whether it be plastic filaments or metallurgy or hell, baking cookies, like whatever flour you are using, like, I get that. I think, I don't know, as an FFL, I'm torn, and people can kill me in the comments for this. I'm torn because if I manufacture and I went through the processes to get the license and I can build my own firearms for resale, there's a thing. If you're building, I see the argument both ways, so I'm not leaning one way or the other. But I see the argument both ways of, well, I'm an FFL and I have to make all of these, I have to follow the rules and the guidelines and get the certifications and all that shit. So you should have to do the same if you're doing them for resale. But I also see the argument of, well, I'm going to make it for myself. And then in 3 years, if I decide I don't want this stupid thing anymore, and I'm going to make the next best thing, and my buddy wants to buy it for $100, like I'm going to make the $100. I get both sides, and I'm not sure where the right answer is, but I know the answer is not serialize it, because it's just more paper trail for the government. And like you said, like at the end of the day, they're not going to use any of that information for good. They're not going to know the circumstances nor care about the circumstances of the serial number. So I get that, but it's hate to say the gray area, but I mean, it really is.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I understand it's never black or white with it, right?
It's not.
And so, yeah, with the serial number, like, for example, in some states, like, it's interesting, there's a case recently in Minnesota, actually. Minnesota has a very odd law where every firearm has to have a serial number. So if you make a P80, you got to engrave it. You don't have to register it with the government of Minnesota, I don't believe. You just have to make sure it's got an engraving on it. So you can build your own firearms in Minnesota, but they have to have some kind of numbering on the side of it that is, signifies it's this, right? But there's a case where a guy got pulled over for some traffic violation, and the officers noticed a firearm in the front seat, and they somehow searched his vehicle, and they were looking at the firearm, and it was a 3D printed firearm. It was actually a M11-9, which is basically a UMP clone, but it uses a Mac 11 bolt assembly and barrel, which is pretty cool. This guy got charged with possession of a untraceable, or whatever you want to call it, a firearm without a serial number, as per Minnesota law or statute or whatever. But the interesting thing is, like, it did have numbering on the side of it. It said M11-9. So technically, I think he's got a. And they don't say, I think, in the Minnesota law, actually, that you have to have it engraved. It just has to have a serial number on it.
A marking.
I think and I think it's actually the same thing for Nevada, surprisingly. Nevada has a similar law where it just has to have a serial number. So you could probably take a Sharpie or a knife and just scrape the numbering in there, and it would pass. So I think that guy's got a good chance of maybe getting that defeated, because it did say M11-9 on it. So
that's true. Yeah, but it's funny you say that, because, like I said, we were listening to your Unsubscribed podcast, and you actually had a conversation with the ATF, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And to the extent, I want to hear about this, but the extent that they wanted you to engrave the firearm to become legal, basically put it through the metal. Is that right? And by doing that, it almost makes the firearm unsafe, doesn't it?
Well, so the conversation that I had with the ATF, that's funny just even saying that, but my buddy,
go way back. We're homies.
Yeah. Well, I am a Fed, so.
Hell yeah.
No,
I was at lunch with my Fed friends, and here's what we said.
Exactly. No, so I was with my friend who's got an SOT, and we went down to the ATF booth at SHOT Show. And instead of farting and laughing and walking away, we actually decided to have a conversation with these guys. And we actually had a question, mainly my friend who's got the FFL SOT, a question, because we were wanting to do a video on the Yankee Boogle, which is a drop-in auto sear, essentially, for
I love that name.
the DIY drop-in auto sear that's 3D printed out of plastic, right? PLA or whatever it is, right? Takes probably, I don't know, because I've never printed one on my own. I will just say that. But the printing time on that and the amount of filament is probably
minimal.
Yeah, a couple hours, if that, and it's probably about $1, maybe less, to print. Yeah. Probably about 75 cents.
So I got a couple auto sears sitting over here, and it's like, dude, they're literally nothing.
Yeah, they're tiny. So this one is, it's just drops into a normal normal semi-auto AR makes it go fast, right? So we wanted to do, because there hasn't really been any content out there on it. I thought, oh man, if we could legally do this and do it the right way, it would be an interesting video. So even though YouTube obviously would age restrict it, but we wouldn't show how you make it or anything, but it would just be cool to cover it. So we wanted to figure out how we would do that, because you have to have every gun, if you're an SOT that you make, or every suppressor or machine gun conversion device has to have a serial number, has to have engravings, right? That's standard. But with a drop-in auto sear the size of like the little Yankee Boogle, and it's got such thin plastic on it, we were wondering, like, we wanted to know, okay, how would we do this, right? So we approached the guy, and the guy actually knew quite a bit about 3D printing. He knew, I'm sure he's got a printer himself, because he was talking to us about the different printers and the PLA and all this stuff. And I'm sure those guys obviously know who I am. They know about the culture of 3D printed guns. I probably don't agree with them on a lot of that stuff, but they are actually dudes that are into firearms. And generally speaking, I think a lot of those ATF guys are, and that's why they joined the ATF. Wouldn't be why I joined. I mean,
No,
wouldn't be me, but
It's not why you joined.
yeah, it's not why I joined the ATF. Oh shit.
Yeah,
No.
you joined for the benefits. That's right. The insurance, 401k.
Yeah, exactly. No, I know the ATF. I disagree with entirely with the organization and their level of kind of overreach and all that stuff. But that aside, I think a lot of those guys are just guys that are into firearms, and they're just a little misled. But they are into firearms, and this guy was into 3D printing. So we chatted with him about it, and then eventually, like, there was like 6 or 7 of the guys that were at the booth all talking to us, because they weren't like, tell us more, but they were actually like,
We
had
the
some
only person at the booth.
yeah. Well, we were like, we actually really wanted to find the answer to this question. So they were like, wait, hold on, let me talk to my other guy, because it was like, I don't think that many people were coming up to him at SHOT Show asking how to legally 3D print an auto sear. But they were really actually quite helpful, because they told us, like, I actually met the guy, and I think I may have told you this in the Unsubscribed podcast, but the guy who came up with the term Swift link, the agent, the ATF guy was like, yeah, that's my name's whatever Swift. I don't know, Mike Swift, and his last name was Swift. He's like, yeah, I came up with the name for the Swift link. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like, you didn't make it though, so why are you taking credit, bro? No, but he classified it as that because it was, it was this essentially, well, it is a machine gun, but it's a machine gun conversion device, whatever. So the Yankee Boogle itself is a machine gun, because the AR platform, as you know, the
One pole.
Yeah, the drop-in auto sears are machine guns. Now, the auto sear that goes in the third pin, that's actually not a machine gun. But when you drill the third hole in the lower, that makes it a machine gun. The lower itself. So
I think that's funny too, because it's really interesting, because you got some guys, people don't understand it, and I'm not going to go into it because YouTube will hate me. But for the most part, I don't care what you go by, 85% go buy strip blowers, if we're talking about metal ones. And I'm not condoning converting them when I say this, but go convert one. You know what happens? You're going to, if hypothetically, if you drill that third hole, 85% of the time, you still can't put that stuff in there. There is more work that has to go in.
You have to have it cut inside.
Don't say what it is, but you have to do more. And so I think that I'm glad that certain people make the shelf and people don't. But the thing is like 85% of them don't have that thing. And so there's more. I think that I would be willing to fight, and I don't want to pay for the lawyers, but I'd be willing to fight that you could drill third hole all day on anything you want, and it's still not fit.
Yeah.
And there's an argument for that. I mean, there really is. I mean, you look at HK and start talking about clipped and pinned. You could clip and pin an AR lower just because if you don't do the other work, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, but also with this question that we had, we needed an answer because we didn't want to do anything illegal, obviously, especially, I mean, given that, you know, my channel and my persona is so public, it's not hard for the ATF to find
they're
out.
watching they're watching your shit.
Yeah, they're watching me, constantly. So we got to do everything by the book, and you know, I would do it otherwise too, obviously. But this, so we wanted to know, okay, so like, how would we do that? They said, so in order to serialize and, you know, make a machine gun out of a Yankee Boogle, we would have to somehow embed the metal into the polymer itself, into the plastic, the 3D printed plastic, in a way that if the metal part was removed, it would render the auto sear inoperable. So that's how we would have to do it. So in order to do that, they said, we would want you to send us your design, and we would say yay or nay. Like, send us your prototype, and if we think this prototype is meeting all of the requirements that we have for it, we'll say yes. And if it's not, we will keep it, obviously, and say no and destroy it. So, I mean, which is not a big deal for a 80-cent piece of plastic. But that was the determination that they had, was that, like, yes, you could do this legally, but you would need to have the piece of metal embedded in that Yankee Boogle, which, I mean, it's technically possible that you could do that maybe at the bottom of it, but if it was at the bottom of it, you could theoretically take it out and it would still work. So that's a challenging one. One that the SOT that sometimes comes and we make content together, that would be their you know, challenge, I guess. And they may be working on it, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But
for what it's worth, we just dropped a podcast, so this will probably be a month ago when I say this. We just dropped a podcast with Jeremiah Cottle, who was I was
about to say, ATF's never changed their mind before.
The inventor of the bump stock.
Oh, and nice.
He actually, after the executive order, all that stuff, he's back in business. But basically what he did, people are like, oh, don't tell the ATF what you're doing. He actually sent a prototype to the ATF, and he actually had the documentation saying, yes, by definition, this meets the criteria, and this is not a machine gun, and this, that, and the other. And he kept that paperwork, and that's what allowed him to sell the bump stocks. Once Trump did the executive order, that all went out the window.
Yeah.
But once they repealed that, thanks to GOA, shout out Eric Pratt.
And Michael Cargill.
Yes. Once they did that, I mean, he's back in business, and he's moved to Tennessee. He's out in East Tennessee now, and he's moving the business there. But yeah, dude, he had no issues. So if your SOT has any questions afterwards, dude, I'll help you get in touch with that guy, and he'll tell you his experience. I mean, he had no issues with the ATF agents at the time. I mean, and even when they were taking his stuff, he was like, the ATF agents were actually cool. It was just their bosses. It was making them do it.
I feel like that's the case with a lot of these ATF agents.
That's
and
government, though. That's I mean, I'm a government employee. It's the lower people usually are. It's the higher echelons. That's where you have the problem in most big government. It's that level. I don't think most agents are trying to shoot your dog. Yes, I'm sure some will, but I don't think most agents. And I know, Mike, you deal with ATF agents directly sometimes. Dude, I don't think all are bad dudes,
dude,
or girls.
Every ATF agent I've ever met, field agents, dude, they're cooler than a fan. They understand what you're doing. They're trying to be helpful. It's their job. I don't want to degrade them. I know everybody wants me to. I don't want to degrade them, but it's no different than, I mean, I hate to say this, but like the guy at Subway making your sandwich. I mean, honestly, or the guy that works the gas station, or the guy that, you know, is your day trader guy that helps you. Like, they're doing a job, and their boss is the one doing the orders. And as long as they want to keep their paycheck, their retirement, and their insurance, they got to do what they say. And how many of us are at a job that we freaking hate? I like my job, but how many people are at a job they hate where you know, they're still there just because they need the check. I mean,
Yeah.
So most are pretty cool, but then you get to the boss level and then they're good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I respect everyone's gotta make a living and do, you know, what you want, I suppose in your career. And if that's what you want to do, that's great. I just couldn't enforce the laws personally, you know, or the decisions that come from the top. I couldn't. I would
couldn't
probably
do it.
quit.
No, I could.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
moving on to 2A advocacy, because you mentioned about that, like right now, there's a lot of fights in different realms. Obviously, your niche is 3D printing guns. If you were going to go in front of Congress tomorrow, what would be your testimony? What would you try to do to get, once we already know gun grabbers are gun grabbers. So how are we going to get those middle ground people that just are not educated to them understand this is a right. It's in the Constitution.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. The people that are in the middle ground, I think when you start talking about details like serial numbers and all that stuff, I think that's when you get into the trouble of like all of the propaganda that's been put out and the negative connotation around these DIY guns, right? And so it's tough to talk to them on that level. I mean, speaking a lot of the stuff that I've already said from my personal experience is that like people that are in this space, they love guns and they love building guns and they just want to make something that's not, but you can't buy, you know, it's like, like a super light 3D printed or a super light plastic MP5 that uses an AR fire control group. The trigger's not shitty. Like sign me up. I want that, you know, or like, or even like the little CZAR, the Scorpion, you know, like, oh, that's a super cool project and I can't buy that. I mean, now you can, but you know, stuff like that, where it's also like from a financial standpoint, it's a lot cheaper to do that yourself too. And it's like, okay, so, I mean, with like the machine gun ban thing, I mean, the whole there's like this whole, if you ask your average person that doesn't know a lot about guns, oh, can a civilian own a machine gun without an FFLSOT? And they would say, oh no, definitely not. But actually you can, you just have to be super rich. And so it's like,
that's most things in life. You could do most things with enough money.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's part of the system that we got, you know, it's like if you pay to play, but at the same time, it's a little bit messed up that if you're poor, you know, you can't have this, but if you're rich, you can, and it has to do with a firearm. And like, so there's a whole element of that. Like there's an element of, okay, well, this person, they don't have enough money to buy even a PSA dagger, but they have enough money to buy the slide and the you know, parts kit. Why can't they go print one on their own, you know? And it's like,
right.
But I'm sure their reaction to that would be, well, why can't you serialize it? It's just a matter of privacy, and it's the right, it's our rights. So like at the end of the day, it's in our Constitution, the Second Amendment, we have the right to keep and bear arms, and it doesn't say except if they're not serialized. So I mean, I guess I don't want to take a too much of a like just suck it kind of attitude, but it's like, well, there's that's a pretty clear, and you know, it's in our Constitution. So until you know, make an amendment that says accept serial numbers, you know, except unless they don't have serial numbers, then I guess, you know, and a lot of people think like the ghost guns are only plastic 3D printed ones. It's right. No, I can make a I got Mac flats in my garage. I can weld together a Mac 11 if I want, like, and won't have a serial number on it, but it's metal.
The thing. It's all about money. And if you take the money, and I mean, we're talking about 3D printed plastic per se firearms, but let's just say you're super rich. I mean, there's no restriction. If you want to buy a metal 3D printer and throw that bad boy in your garage and probably have to bring in like 3-phase or 4-phase electric, whatever it is. I don't know. I'm not smart enough for that. Like, I mean, Alibaba's going to sell you a damn metal 3D printer. I mean, they don't give a shit. Yeah. And if you want to start 3D printing legit metal, like, fine. If you want to set up I mean, there's only a couple manufacturers that forge lowers in this country, but like, if you want to set up a forge in your backyard, like, by God, go ahead. There's no law against it. It's just, this is the economic option.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, I hope that someday we get to the point where you can have an at-home metal 3D printer. That would be pretty incredible.
Be
I mean,
really
I would
cool.
be printing all sorts of stuff for my motorcycles, and I would go to town with that. Obviously, with firearms too. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you'd be looking at probably about $750,000 to get that set up in your garage, but it's possible. And yeah, if you have enough money, you can. But yeah, plastic is the easiest route. It's the most, user accessible, economically friendly option. And it's honestly, for what it is, for squirting plastic out of a hot tube, it's pretty damn good.
This sounds
Laser guided
sexual.
glue
Yeah,
gun.
That sounds sexual.
It's
I
just
like it. I'm here
It
for
would
it.
just be nice if there was a platform that would actually like you could put your content on and like not be censored, and we could
That
see
would
these
be
kind.
sweet. And that people were interested
yeah.
in and had a good algorithm. Yeah.
It'd be great. It'd be great if there was like a new streaming channel coming out that people could go on and watch you to do all this without being censored.
Yeah.
I do have a question on 3D printing. Like, I have a ton of fucking questions.
Of course,
about it,
Mike
but-
does.
Shut up, Matt.
He's got. 3D printing's your thing. You've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah. What, in your opinion, in the 3D print industry for the consumer, what is PSR's limitation? What is the limitation where you say, shit, I can't print that? And I'm not talking about NFA items. I'm not talking about silencers or auto sears or any of that shit. Like, when you have to print something, I know barrels are being printed now. I'm not sure how reliable they are or how many rounds, what the count is and what the material is and all that sorcery. But what is the limitation right now for PSR?
Well, I would say from me making a whole gun from scratch, I would say it's all the pressure bearing components, barrel, bolt, springs. You can actually, there is a jig out there that's a 3D printable jig where you can
What?
you can actually bend your own springs
No
for
freaking
like
way.
Glock
Plastic-
mags. Yeah,
like
yeah.
fucking
So
slinkies.
yeah, exactly. So you can do that, but to get a perfectly, reliable spring. So I would just say metal stuff like the barrel, the bolt, the firing pin, the rod, the recoil rods, etc. That kind of stuff. That's really hard to DIY unless you have a whole machine shop and stuff like that. So that's, I would say, the biggest kind of barrier to being able to do it entirely by yourself. Like I said, the FGC9 is just about as close as you can get to that, because you can just buy stuff that's not gun parts and make it gun parts by rifling a piece of bar stock steel, that's a tube, and then
crazy.
you can make it. It's not going to be one MOA, but it'll be rifled and it'll be accurate enough, at least for a 9mm subgun.
It'll be minute a man at 25 yards.
Exactly.
I guess as a third party, because like I don't print. My brother's played with a printer a little bit. He was printing like little Dungeons and Dragons walls and houses and stuff. But he's printed a little bit. But it's been amazing. It's always been really interesting to me and to watch the industry. And it's a fairly new phenomenon. I mean, we're 10 years into making firearms out of plastic on printers, maybe. But there's the shift that's starting to come of like printers are a different generation of firearms owners and firearms interests. And for a long time, there is a resistance against 3D printing. Like, it'll never be strong enough. It'll never be durable enough. It's a waste of time. But even like just doing a simple Google search of print, shoot, repeat of PSR, you see that like your knowledge is starting to have an influence, and other people's out there too. There's a lot of people in that community, but it's like teaming up with KAK. I'm sure there's lots of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that nobody even is aware of, but the industry is starting to have a heavy influence, even if it's just from prototyping, from the stuff that 3D printers are doing. How far away are we, do you think, before like 3D printers, professionals in that space, really, really talented hobbyists even, are a regular part of big gun industry?
I mean, that's a great question, man. I think we're there because a lot of these people, I've had people that have come up to me that said, like, I got started printing because of you, and I learned how to do my own designs and use CAD to make my own designs, and now I'm engineering stuff for X firearms manufacturer. So I think those stories are really inspiring and really cool, and I think the firearms industry as a whole, now that Gen Z is kind of filtering into this workspace of all these bigger companies that are making firearms, like that, and to have people that are even just messed around with 3D printing a little bit and got into CAD, like having those people enter the workspace, enter the workforce for these firearms companies is a really good thing because they're approaching it in a unique way. They've got a lot of really great ideas. They're dreamers. They believe in just like they have wacky, cool ideas. And a lot of these, like, these more kind of hip, cool gun accessory manufacturers are like from that kind of space and that generation. So I think, as we see Gen Z coming into firearms, not only firearms ownership, but design and manufacturing and engineering, having that fresh take on things, and whether or not they were inspired by me or not, it doesn't really matter. It's just having those people in there with new ideas that come from this space is like it's a huge thing, and I think we're already seeing it happen, and meeting some people that have been into 3D printing, got into learning how to design CAD, that are gun autists, and this is like what they love, and now they're working for whatever company, I mean, you name it, So I think it's a big deal, and I think maybe when you combine like those people's knowledge and interests with all these really high capability processes like metal 3D printing, then you get like the titanium printed suppressors and all this other cool stuff that's happening. I mean, for example, like SIG was one of the early 3D printed silencer, that implemented 3D printing in silencers. I mean, SIG is a huge company. Won't speak about their recent
they're in some
debacle
shit right now
on social media.
Deservedly so, in my opinion, deservedly so. But yeah, you get these really cool minds putting their ideas together, and yeah, I think, and I mean, another whole thing too, and I'll just kind of go a little bit of a tangent, but we've talked about the non-NFA stuff, but when it comes to DIY suppressors, there's been a ton of innovation since even the last year or two. It's really been incredible to see, because especially now that Form 1s don't take so long. I mean, I guess they were like more like a month or 2 months before, but now it's like a few days. It's become way more viable and way more cost effective to make your own silencer with a 3D printer. And I know not a lot of people love, had the whole approval process. And of course, that's up to you whether or not you want to follow the law. But if you're following the law, which I would recommend, just, you do that, you can make a silencer for about $300, including the tax stamp, for a rifle, for 5.56, for 30 cal, 7.62. I mean, and if you want to make a super quiet silencer for, even a little bit less, I mean, like the 22 can that I just was out with the SOT. I was out in Wisconsin, and we were doing some testing with this. It's a 3D printed 22 can, which I know 22's not that crazy in terms of the pressures and everything. So it doesn't have to be engineered really crazy, but we're talking PLA plastic, not even carbon fiber nylon, just PLA baffles. Ooh. And then you slide a Red Bull can over the baffles, and it just literally looks like a Red Bull can. But there's a space for the engraving. You engrave the not the Red Bull can, but this ring that goes on the end of it, and yeah, it's a 1/2x28. It's just a couple small little parts you get on Amazon, and
basically the blast baffle.
Yeah, it's really, really quiet too, which is awesome.
That
got
is
an
so cool.
idea I'm going to talk to you offline about. Go ahead, Adam. But I've got an idea I want to talk to you offline about.
So
Make a list.
what's the wear item like as a for a 5.56? Like is there like a wear period where eventually that's going to heat up so many times that it's going to wear, or is this something that should last a while?
So it depends on what kind of fire, how much you're putting through it. Like any suppressor, there's like, if you put it on a short barrel gun versus a 16-inch gun or 18, whatever it is, you're gonna see varying performance differences based on that. But from what I can tell, so I actually did a whole video on 3D printed suppressors, which unfortunately I had to take down, not because it was a 3D printed thing, but because YouTube cracked down on me doing any kind of giveaway that had to do with firearms. But
For sure.
it was, but no, there's like a ton of other creators that do it.
That's true. Actually, there's giveaways a lot on YouTube.
A ton, and they don't get messed with. But for whatever reason, YouTube almost removed me from the platform entirely because of it. So I had
You
to
were called out by name. I mean, people know who you are at
That's
YouTube.
what it is. So there's, there's over 10 plus creators that are big YouTube channels that do the same exact thing with the same company and don't get messed with, but they decided to target me on it. So that is what it is. But that video will get reposted at some point. But I did a DIY suppressor test on 5.56 full auto, and full auto, they're not full auto rated. I'll just say that. Like, you can do it.
That's fair. I mean,
You can do it. The ones that we did were PLA. So they were just the standard material, like I said, not temperature resistant, really. You can print them out of nylon, and that is the preferred filament. Like I said, you could do it on the Bamboo Lab. You just have to print it in this material that's a little bit stronger, a little bit more heat resistant. But you do it on that, and we're gonna test that soon. But the PLA ones, I mean, you can just do semi-auto shots, like, one every 5 seconds, and as long as you're not doing that all day, 5 seconds, it'll last. I mean, I've heard the PLA ones lasting up to 1,000 rounds. I've heard also, but the nylon ones, they do last, and I actually really want to try it full auto, because we were able to get through 3 mag. I think on the third mag, either the second or the third mag, full auto. I thought it was just going to blow up after 5 shots full auto, but the first mag stayed on the gun. And I was like, wow, okay, let's do it again. And then on the second mag, I think halfway through the mag, it just kind of, it disassembled rapidly. But when it comes, so that's 5.56, right? That's about the most, that's the largest
Pretty
use
hot
case you're going to
pressure,
get.
man. That's a lot of pressure.
it's a lot of pressure.
Exactly. Now 300 blackout, like subsonic out of a 30 cal, even in PLA, I bet that would last much longer.
Okay.
But like 5.56 it's a hot round. So
I was curious because of the pressures and the hotness. I imagine they can slow around. So you mentioned YouTube, and you mentioned like them taking a lot of restrictions away from you. And I hinted towards it earlier, but I want to actually talk about it. You have a TV show coming out soon, correct? On a network.
yes, I do. It's on We the Free.
Oh, hey, check this out.
Go.
I'm pouring
nice.
my liquor.
Oh,
Look at that
hell
cup.
yeah. Free advertising. We the Free. Go subscribe. Sign up.
Shout out John
Use
Keys
the-
and
yep.
Shermichael.
Yep. Shouts out to them. Use the code PSR for a discount. I got a whole season coming out on We the Free. It's going to be its own network. So it's going to be like, not like Pepperbox in the sense that Pepperbox is it's basically uncensored YouTube content, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's content that these creators put out, and they change they keep the spicy stuff in, which is great, and you can watch it on Pepperbox, so it's uncensored. I love that. This is going to be a bit different in that it is from the ground up its own thing. So it's not going to be like a PSR episode. It's going to be something completely different. It's still going to be me being silly and having fun with DIY firearms, but it's going to be way more produced. So we've got like a whole camera crew that's great. Shouts out to all my dudes. I was just out there.
Yeah, we know you were just, I talked to
Brendan.
John the other day. Y'all were
Yeah.
just filming, and then I saw the YouTube stuff. I talked to John. He was like, dude, they're out filming PSR right now. And I was like, hell yes.
Yes, dude. Yeah. So I just had a blast with them for the last. I got back Friday, so I was out there from Sunday night to Friday, and it was just a great experience. So cool seeing these guys. I mean, I'm a filmmaker myself, and I edit all my videos and stuff, so I know what goes into making
They're
a
about
solid
their
production.
business, dude. They're about their business.
They are. So it's going to be really cool because it's like it's going to have an app. If it probably already is on there. Obviously, it's already up, but it's We the Free app, so you can download it for your phone. You can download it for like Roku if you want to watch it on your big TV or on Apple, the Apple Store for your Apple TV or whatever it is. So you can download that app, sign up. It's like Netflix, it's like a yearly subscription, I think, is the best way to go about it.
Yes.
I would get the yearly subscription, and we're doing 8 episodes, and they're going to be like a full episode, probably at the end of the day, between 20 minutes and a half hour. So it'll be like a full YouTube video in length, but it'll be totally different from my YouTube channel in that we got like red cameras. I would say, like, if I was going to give you a little bit of a teaser about kind of like the show, it's like if you mixed, I don't know if you ever watched Sons of Guns on the Discovery Channel.
Yes.
It's kind of like Sons of Guns mixed with The Office, mixed with just mixed with DIY 3D printed firearms.
Without the kid touching.
Yeah. Ooh. I thought, Mike, I really thought you just wouldn't mention that part.
See, fuck
Wait,
that.
what was Sons? Wait, was there Sons of Guns? Was there kid touching in that?
Yeah, the dude.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The dude who was the main
Oh,
guy?
God.
What was his name?
Yeah.
I don't remember his name, but yeah, he ended up.
We wouldn't say his name anyways.
I'm not going to say his name. What you should have said, and from here on out, what you're going to say, because you really need to rely back on this guy. You need to go back to the unsubscribed podcast guys, and you need to say it's like Brothers in Arms, which was Eli Double Tap and his boy Rocco Vargas.
Okay.
And what they were doing is they were building guns.
I've ever been accused of anything like
sorry,
that.
I got to drop it now. The dude's name was Will Hayden. That's
God.
the guy that was the owner of Sons of Guns, Louisiana. Don't go there.
Yeah, well, fuck that guy.
Yeah,
I just honestly, I haven't watched that show that much.
Yep.
But I've from what I've seen, it's just kind of like Orange County Choppers or West Coast Choppers or whatever it was.
Yeah,
like that era of reality TV.
I was
so like
waiting
that
on you
vibe.
to say that. Yeah, fuck him with one of your 3D printed dildos.
Yes, he deserves it. If he's not already getting it in jail, he
is.
But
So, yeah.
PSR, when's that first show come out? When is the first episode gonna air?
I am not entirely sure on the exact date, but it should be sometime in April that the first episode drops. Nice. We've gone and filmed 4. We're going to film 4 more in the late spring. It's out in Wisconsin, so it's the frozen tundra, but it's going to be a great time. The owner of Aves, David, great guy. So we filmed it out at Aves, who is my channel sponsor, and they're the SOT. They've got a bunch of cool stuff, and they're just a good company and great people. So they hosted us, and we were filming in the machine shop, and then we went out to the range, and yeah, well, a lot of shenanigans, a lot of fun.
So I don't want to give anything away, but based off of your premise of Sons of Guns or Brothers in Arms, is it safe for me to assume, or are you going to tell me I just got to wait and watch? Is it safe for me to assume there is a mission? There is a whiteboard, or there is something where it's like, hey, today we're going to build a blank, and we don't see all the ins and outs, but we see the process, like you said, of Orange County Choppers or Sons of Guns when they were building guns, or Brothers in Arms or whatever, and you kind of see the things, and you see bits and pieces, and then at the end you see the finished product, and you actually get to see it function and stuff. Is that safe to assume?
I would say roughly safe to assume something like that. Yeah.
Dude, that is going to be so badass. And what was your code again on We the Free?
PSR. Easy.
Definitely use that, because John Keys is slacking. He's told me he'd get me a code for Whiskey and Windage for like the past 4 weeks, but he's waiting until April. So use PSR until we get ours. But yeah, you know how that goes.
Yep, yep. Easy to remember. Just
I'm just
yeah.
gonna, PSR, I'm gonna use your code. We haven't got one yet, so I was gonna wait to.
Yeah,
I
I'm gonna
was
use
gonna
your
wait to get
code.
our code to use to
I'm
sign
gonna
up.
use
I'm
it.
just gonna use your code.
I'm gonna be real. I wanted to use my code because I'm cheap as
Yeah.
shit, and I wanted to use my code and get the kickback for myself just so I could get the discount.
Yes.
And John's just slacking. I think I don't know what he's doing, but he's
He wants
definitely
me
not
to pay
giving
full
us a
price
code.
for that thing, of course.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pay full price for this thing. Damn it, John.
Oh man.
John's
Well,
a homie, so just know that like it's all love. I'm just gonna give him shit.
yeah, no, John's a great guy. Yeah, so
He
I'm
is.
honored to be a part of it. When they approached me to be a part of it, I was super psyched and just I think what they're doing is really neat, and I like that it's not just YouTube content that's decensored or uncensored. You know, they're really going the extra mile as far as the production of it, and I think a lot of the other shows are going to be really fun to watch too. So
Oh, his
it's
show's
not
gonna be
just me.
fun.
Dude,
I
oh,
think
yeah.
John's personal show. I think it's called Shooting the Shit, and his concept of his show is gonna be one of my favorites to watch
Yeah.
as well.
I'm just super stoked about it because I'm the guy that had to buy the Outdoor Channel or all of these extra different ones just to watch Top Shot or whatever the hell new show was there, the flavor of the year. And I hunt, but let me say that I can only take so much of all of the hunting shows. You know, I got to watch 7 hunting shows this day just, you know, in the rotation to get to the one gun building show or the one whatever. The shows like Build Box or Top Shot or all those things, dude, those were so damn cool. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad that he's putting a network together where we're going to get that content and we're going to watch. So just know it hasn't even dropped yet, but you've got 3 viewers just in us 3 because we're all going to watch it.
Hell yeah, love to hear that, man. Yeah, and yeah, it's just kind of surreal to even be a part of it and having my own little program for people to tune into and watch. I'm
Who would have
I'm
thought that?
elated. Yeah.
So on that note, PSR, what's next for you? I mean, it sounds like you're gonna keep fighting the good fight on YouTube, and you got this coming up. Is there anything else in the works behind the scenes that you can tell people about?
Well, I am, as far as my schedule goes, I've got a couple things I'm doing in the next couple months I'm excited about. I got into doing competitive shooting, like doing finished brutality. So I've done, this was my 3rd finished brutality that I did this past, last month. I was out in Finland, and those competitions are super fun because they're like a mixture of, you know, you gotta be physically pretty in shape to do them because there's a lot of really just like lifting stuff, jumping over stuff, skiing in this case, while you know also needing to be accurate and being a good shot. And so I love that the challenge that goes into that and doing it all in full kit and stuff. It's a good way to prepare yourself if you want to know what's going to be working for you and what doesn't as far as equipment or firearms. Like doing a brutality competition will really help you figure that stuff out pretty fast. So I am really excited. I'm doing Lynx Brutality in May, at the end of May, which is going to be in Slovenia. It's run by Polinar Tactical. I don't know if you know.
yeah,
Polinar
Yeah, we know
Tactical guys are awesome.
Yeah,
we know those guys,
so-
of course.
Yeah, so they're doing that. I'm going to a night vision shoot that's going to be a competition that's called Moons Out that Ian Forgotten Weapons is running.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yep. So that's going to happen at the Echo Valley Training Center this coming weekend. I guess this weekend.
Right.
And I'm going up to Virginia, just on the border of West Virginia for that. I'm actually taking. I'm pretty stoked on this. It's a little bit schizo, but
Let's see it.
maybe just a little, not schizo, but maybe just a little autist. But this is my MCX 300
Oh.
Blackout.
Right.
It's a converted one, so it's got the conversion kit. It's just a normal
Nice.
AR lower. It's
Got a hintism. It definitely
a little
has
bit of
hintism.
hintism because I put 2 lasers on this.
I saw
So I've got, this is the Rovivon GL4 Pro, or no, GL5 Pro. I don't know if it's out yet, but I told them about my channel and they gave me one at SHOT Show. So shouts out to Rovivon. But
Heck yeah.
this is kind of like a Surefire XVL2 clone. I don't know if you're familiar with the Rovivon stuff, but it's got a huge kind of like wide beam. So it's like better for close-up stuff. And so I'm running, there's a few different divisions. There's passive and active. And then there's, I think, armored, which I'm not going to do armored where you have to do the whole full kit and everything. But this is like the primary laser, which is kind of mounted in sort of a silly way. But this is a cool-ass laser. This is the AMMJ Penumbra. And it's got, IR vis laser, illuminator and everything. But the cool thing is it mounts on a T2 mount.
That's so cool. Yeah, the aim point mount.
And
Hell
then,
yeah.
so you can put it, I could put it low if I wanted, and I could put it low on the front with like, just a normal mount or whatever, or I could get the ADM makes the quick detach T2 mounts, which is cool, but I put it on this Arasaka mount, and then I put, it's got an RMR cut on the top, so you can use it like you would an optic.
That's crazy.
And then, so this is clearing that, so it's not in the way, but then I've got the switch where I can activate either laser, whichever one I want.
You just put a video out on this a week or two ago, didn't you?
That's so cool.
Oh, I probably talked about it. Yeah. I had it on my Broad River Tactical.
That's right.
Yeah. Good. Now I know you actually watch. But yeah, the Broad River Tactical, it's the Car 15 SD. It's a cool ass gun. But yeah, I'm running this thing in this night vision competition. I'm gonna do it both. Actually, they let me compete in both divisions. One night we're gonna do all the stages on Thursday night, and I'm gonna do passive aiming on that run through. So I got an EOTech, which is, in my opinion, probably the best optic to passive aim through.
Definitely.
And I got an ADM rifle UIC that they got me. I'm super excited about. So I'm shooting that in passive, and then I'm shooting this in active. So I'm doing that coming up. That's going to be super fun. Then I'm going to Kalash Bash beginning of April. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Awesome. I'm trying to get out there.
else.
I'm not too far from there, so I'm trying to get out there as well.
Hell yeah. And I mean, as far as just like the channel goes, I'm just trying to get rid of my strikes right now. I got one strike right now that's expiring in April. But I'm trying to be a good boy until then in the eyes of YouTube. But I also got my motorcycle channel, like car motorcycle channel. It's called Print Shift Repeat. That's like my little pet project. I haven't uploaded anything in a long time because I've just been super busy with the gun stuff. But I'm looking to do a lot more content on that channel. I love, my other passion is motorcycles and racing motorcycles. So little motorcycles, not big ones. But I love that stuff. So I'm going to probably be putting out more content there too.
And music projects, dude, you got any albums coming out?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good question. So I actually just, believe it or not, I just sold a couple guns that I really didn't care about, which is not a big deal. I know I would usually say I hold on to all the guns, but these ones are like, I've got my primary go-to guns, and I've got guns that I'm just like, Right. So I went and sold a couple guns because I actually have to buy a new laptop because this laptop is not doing it for me. It's about 6 years old now, so I'm saving up to get a new laptop, and when I get that laptop, I probably actually will go get one tomorrow. Funny enough, but I sold some guns.
Like, thanks for calling me on my bullcrap, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get right back on the music for you.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I got to do that before I can get to the music. But I've got a ton of songs that are not released that I just kind of. People are like, where can I listen to this? And I'm just like, you know what? I really should put that out. And it's been like that for freaking couple years now. So I got a ton of tracks that I want to put out. That'll come this year. I'm saying it right now. I will drop a PSR album this year. So hold me to it.
We need to get you to do a music. We need our theme music redone. I need to send you our intro. And we need to do a PSR intro.
Yes,
hell yeah.
Good.
I'll send you one. Well,
yeah.
Well, man, before we close it out, Matt has a question. But Matt, ask your question. But when you're done, I have a caveat to that.
All right. So we at the end of the show, we like to do 5 guns PSR. So they can be any 5 guns. NFA doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. Cost of ammunition doesn't matter. It's not the zombie apocalypse. Just 5 guns to get you through the rest of your life. What 5 guns is PSR taking?
So my caveat is, again, NFA doesn't matter, cost of ammo doesn't matter. What 5 are you printing?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Even if the technology doesn't exist to print it now.
I could even narrow it down to it has to exist now in the technology, and I can probably come up with 5.
Okay.
Number 1, the crank Gatling gun in 5.56, 6 barrels. It's like a minigun. You just crank it manually. It's on a tripod. It's out right now.
That was a SHOT Show.
Yes.
Yep.
Nopal is the designer, and it's a super, super cool project. He just did one that actually has a suppressor on it, and he did it. 300 blackout
So cool.
subs. 300 blackout subs through a crank gun. So sick.
Serialized DeWalt drill, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's in the works with the SOT that I
That's gonna be
worked with.
badass.
So that's gonna be fun when that happens. But that's number 1. I mean, number 2. I mean, I guess if you're gonna put the caveat of maybe the technology doesn't exist yet, but a 3D printed PKM.
Hell yes.
That would be ideal.
Ideal.
Yeah. Yes. There's got to be a 50 in there, so I guess it would have to be a printed Barrett. I've actually already done a video on a printed lower for the Raptor 50 single shot upper.
Ooh.
That video's out if you want to check it out.
I mean, if PSA can make a 50, PSR can make a 50.
There you go, right there.
I love it.
And I guess because because of just my nostalgia about 3D printing, the FGC9. I'm taking the FGC9, so that's 3.
Ooh.
And then my other favorite 3D printed gun is probably the KF5, the 3D printed MP5. I just love that thing. It just shoots like a dream. It's just
Who doesn't love an MP5?
Who doesn't love an
it's-
MP5, whether it's printed or metal?
Yeah.
Like, who doesn't love one?
exactly. And then as my meme gun, I'm gonna have to say the Glong. Everyone, you got to have a Glock in the arsenal. It's got to be the Glong.
Everyone does. Those are good
Dude,
choices.
I love that.
Those are good choices. PSR, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Before we get out of here, just so we can say it one more time, where can people find your content?
So if you want to check out my YouTube channel, it is called just PSR. If you type in PSR, you should hopefully, if the YouTube algorithm loves me enough, maybe I'll show up. But yeah, PSR, or you could say print shoot repeat. It's youtube.com/print shoot repeat. You can find me on Instagram at print shoot repeat. You can find me on Twitter at printing guns, and you can do the coolest thing ever and sign up for We the Free and use the code PSR and watch my show, which is an exclusive that won't be on YouTube, and that would make my day.
Awesome. Well, PSR, we appreciate it. Guys, if you got this far, leave a comment below at PSR in the comments and ask him what gun he should print next if you haven't seen it yet. Give him some ideas. I'm sure he's always looking for new ideas. And also make sure you are subscribed, hit that notification bell. We truly appreciate you. Like I always say, stay dangerous, carry a weapon. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.